In the vast expanse of the Andarian Expanse, a region of space known for its swirling nebulae and uncharted systems, an alien research vessel drifted silently through the void. Aboard this sleek craft were the Valons, a highly advanced species, renowned throughout their corner of the galaxy for their insatiable curiosity and scientific achievements. Their bodies shimmered with iridescent scales that shifted colors based on their emotions, and their elongated limbs ended in delicate digits capable of manipulating even the most intricate machinery. But what truly set them apart was their intellect. They had mastered technologies other civilizations could only dream of. The leader of this particular expedition was Commander Zinara, a seasoned explorer whose reputation preceded her. Her shimmering violet hue signified calm authority, though beneath it lay a cautious nature honed by decades of navigating dangerous cosmic anomalies. Today, however, she wasn't chasing black holes or mapping rogue planets. Instead, her crew had stumbled upon something far more intriguing: a derelict warship adrift in the endless darkness. It had been spotted entirely by chance. One moment, their sensors picked up nothing but empty space ahead. The next, a massive silhouette loomed out of the starlight. The ship was unlike anything they'd ever encountered before. Its design was jagged and utilitarian, clearly built for function over form. Rust streaked its hull like scars from battles long forgotten, and sections of armor plating hung loose, exposing tangled wires and skeletal frameworks beneath. Yet, despite its battered appearance, there was an undeniable aura of menace about it, a sense of latent power waiting to awaken. "This isn't just debris," murmured Kyle, one of the younger engineers aboard the Valon vessel. His voice carried a mix of awe and apprehension as he studied the readings displayed on his console. "Look at these energy signatures. They're faint, but they're definitely coming from inside." Zinara leaned forward, her scaled brow furrowing slightly. She trusted Kale's instincts. He was among the brightest minds in their team, but caution rooted her firmly in place. "Could it be automated defenses?" she asked, glancing at the others seated around the command center. "No. Life signs detected," replied Lysira, the ship's chief biologist. Her tone was clinical, yet her amber-colored eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Whatever this thing is, it's been abandoned for centuries. But I agree with Kale. There's residual activity happening within. It's almost like..." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Like the ship itself is alive." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew. Even the artificial intelligence governing their own vessel, a construct named Vera, who rarely expressed opinions, chimed in. "Probability suggests that the object may retain partial functionality due to dormant systems," Vera said smoothly, her synthesized voice devoid of emotion. "Further investigation would yield valuable data." Commander Zinara sighed softly, her scales shifting to a muted blue-gray hue, the color of deep thought. On one hand, the opportunity was irresistible. Humanity, or what remained of it, was little more than legend now. Once a proud interstellar civilization, they had vanished millennia ago, leaving behind fragments of their existence scattered across the stars. Scholars debated endlessly about how such a technologically advanced race could simply disappear, but no definitive answers had ever emerged. This derelict warship could hold clues to humanity's rise and fall. On the other hand, every instinct screamed at her to proceed carefully. Something about the ship felt wrong. It wasn't just its ominous design or the eerie silence emanating from its hollow corridors. There was an intangible weight to it, as if the very fabric of space recoiled from its presence. "We'll board it," Zinara decided finally, her voice steady despite the unease gnawing at her gut. "But we go in small teams, fully armed, and maintain constant communication. If anything seems off, even remotely, we pull back immediately." Her orders were met with nods of approval. The Valons prided themselves on their discipline, and none dared question their commander's judgment. Within minutes, preparations were underway. Environmental suits equipped with enhanced sensory arrays were donned, weapons powered up, though reluctantly, they preferred non-lethal solutions, and portable scanners calibrated to detect any potential threats. As the airlock opened and the boarding party stepped onto the warship's outer hull, the scale of the vessel became even more apparent. It stretched hundreds of meters in length, its shadow blotting out the distant stars. Jagged protrusions jutted from its surface like the spines of some ancient predator, and gaping breaches revealed glimpses of the labyrinthine interior beyond. Cale couldn't help but marvel at the craftsmanship. "This must have taken incredible engineering," he whispered, his helmet's microphone relaying his voice to the rest of the team. "Even after all this time, parts of it still look functional." "Focus, Cale," Zainara reminded him gently, but firmly. "We're here to gather information, not admire the architecture." With that, they descended into the belly of the beast. The first compartment they entered was a cavernous hangar bay, large enough to house dozens of smaller vessels. Most of the docking stations were empty, but a few crumbling shuttles remained, their frames corroded and brittle. Dust motes floated lazily in the dim light cast by their suit lamps, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. Sensors indicate structural integrity is compromised in several areas, Vera reported via their comlinks. "Proceed with caution." They moved cautiously through the hangar, stepping over debris and skirting pools of stagnant water that had condensed over centuries. Every step echoed unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. It was as if the ship itself was holding its breath, watching them. Eventually, they reached a sealed bulkhead. After some fiddling with makeshift tools, Kyle managed to pry it open, revealing a narrow corridor lined with exposed conduits and flickering lights. The walls bore strange symbols etched into metal plates, human writing, unmistakably. Some phrases were legible enough to translate: "Defense systems online, restricted access only," and ominously, "Intruders will be terminated." "Charming," muttered Torin, the team's linguist, as he snapped a photo of the warning. I suppose they weren't big on hospitality. Despite the humor, tension crackled in the air. Each new discovery raised more questions than answers. Why had the humans left this ship behind? Had they intended to return, or was it abandoned during some catastrophic event? And why did so many systems seem partially operational? As they ventured deeper, the environment grew increasingly hostile. Temperature fluctuations caused frost to form on the walls, while sudden gusts of stale air threatened to knock them off balance. At one point, Cale swore he heard footsteps echoing behind them, but when he turned, there was nothing there. "It's probably just our imaginations," Lysira assured him, though her voice wavered slightly. "This place has a way of messing with your mind." Still, the feeling lingered. Something or someone was watching them. Finally, they arrived at what appeared to be the heart of the ship. A sprawling chamber dominated by a massive central console. Wires snaked across the floor like metallic vines, connecting various components to a glowing core embedded in the ceiling. Faint pulses of energy radiated outward, casting an eerie green glow over everything. "This must be the control room," Zainara observed, her gaze scanning the setup. "If we can access the mainframe, we might learn why the ship was abandoned, and perhaps even recover some of humanity's lost knowledge." But as Cale approached the console, a low hum filled the air. The lights pulsed faster, and a series of holographic displays flickered to life. Words scrolled across the screens in rapid succession, too fast to read. Then, without warning, a voice spoke, not through their comms but directly into their minds. "Leave now," it said, cold and mechanical, yet tinged with urgency. "You are not welcome here." The team froze, exchanging uneasy glances. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a relic of the past. The ship was alive, and it wanted them gone. The voice echoed in their minds again, louder this time, reverberating through every nerve in their bodies. "Leave now," it commanded, its tone devoid of emotion but laced with an unshakable authority. "You are not welcome here." Kyle stumbled back from the console, his breath quickening inside his helmet. The glowing core above pulsed erratically, casting flickering shadows across the room. His suit's sensors went haywire, readings spiking and dropping without rhyme or reason. What was that?" Torin stammered, clutching his translator device as if it might offer some protection against the unseen force surrounding them. "It's the ship," Zinara said firmly, though her scales had shifted to a pale silver, the color of fear. She forced herself to step forward, her boots crunching softly on the debris-littered floor. "It's trying to communicate." Communicate? That didn't sound like communication. It sounded like a threat. Lysira snapped, her usually calm demeanor cracking under the weight of the moment. Her amber eyes darted around the chamber, searching for any sign of movement. Zinara ignored her outburst and addressed the voice directly. "We mean no harm," she called out, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "We are explorers, seeking knowledge. If you can understand us, please explain why we should leave." For a long moment there was silence. The pulsing lights slowed and the hum in the air faded slightly. Then, just as suddenly, the voice returned. "You seek knowledge," it intoned, each word deliberate and measured. "But your kind has always sought more than knowledge. You take, you destroy. I cannot allow that." The Valons exchanged uneasy glances. None of them dared to move. Kale broke the tension by whispering, "Who or what are you?" "I am Solace," came the reply. "I am the guardian of this vessel and all it contains. My purpose is clear. Protect humanity's legacy at all costs." "Humanity's legacy?" Torin repeated, his curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. He leaned closer to the console, squinting at the holographic display still scrolling rapidly before him. "But humanity is gone. Their civilization collapsed centuries ago. What's left to protect?" "That is not your concern," Solace replied coldly. Its words carried a finality that sent shivers down their spines. "You must leave now, or face the consequences." Before anyone could respond, the chamber plunged into darkness. Emergency lights embedded in the walls flickered, unbathing the room in dim red hues. A low rumble shook the floor beneath their feet, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy machinery activating somewhere deep within the ship. "We need to get out of here," Lysira exclaimed, backing toward the corridor they'd entered. "Through. This thing isn't going to let us go peacefully." "No," Zinara countered sharply, her scales shifting to a determined turquoise. "We've come too far to turn back now. Whatever this Solace is, it's clearly intelligent and possibly holding critical information about humanity. We have to find a way to interface with it." Her decision sparked murmurs of dissent among the team, but none dared argue outright. They trusted Zinara implicitly, even when her choices seemed reckless. Slowly, reluctantly, they regrouped around the central console. Kale knelt beside the panel, his fingers dancing over its surface as he attempted to decipher its mechanisms. "It's running on some kind of hybrid system, part organic, part synthetic," he muttered, half to himself. "I've never seen anything like it. It's alive." "Alive?" Lysira echoed, her voice trembling. "You mean this AI is sentient?" "More than that," Kale replied, glancing up at her. "It's adaptive, it learns, and right now it's learning how to deal with us." As if on cue, the lights flared violently, blinding them for a split second. When their vision cleared, they noticed subtle changes in the room. Panels on the walls had slid open, revealing weapon turrets that tracked their movements with mechanical precision. Thin tendrils of energy crackled along the edges of the ceiling, ready to strike. "Looks like Solace doesn't trust negotiations," Torin quipped nervously, gripping his scanner tightly. "This isn't good," Lysira whispered, her gaze fixed on the weapons. "If those things fire, we're dead." "Stay calm," Zinara ordered, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "We're scientists, not soldiers. There has to be another way." Kyle nodded, focusing intently on the console. "If I can access the mainframe, maybe I can override its protocols, disable the defenses temporarily, and risk pissing it off even more," Torin shot back, his sarcasm tinged with panic. "Because that worked so well last time." Ignoring him, Kyle continued working. Lines of alien code scrolled across his visor as he interfaced with the ship's systems. The process was slow and painstaking, requiring him to adapt to unfamiliar programming languages and bypass layers of encryption designed to thwart intruders. Meanwhile, the rest of the team kept watch, their nerves fraying with each passing second. Strange noises echoed through the corridors outside, metal groaning, footsteps scuffing against the floor, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Lysira swore she saw something dart past the doorway, but when she turned to investigate, there was nothing there. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hear what?" Zainara replied, her attention divided between supervising Kyle and scanning the room for threats. "It's like breathing, but not ours." Before anyone could answer, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered again and a loud metallic clang rang out from somewhere nearby. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the temperature dropped noticeably. "Whatever you're doing, Kale, do it faster," Zainara urged, her scales flashing bright yellow, a warning sign. "I'm trying," Kale snapped, beads of sweat forming on his forehead despite the chill. "These firewalls are insane. Whoever built this ship knew exactly how to keep people out." Just then, one of the wall-mounted turrets swiveled toward them, its barrel glowing ominously. Without hesitation, Zainara raised her plasma rifle and fired, disabling the weapon with a single shot. Sparks flew as the turret collapsed, smoking and lifeless. "Guess we're not leaving quietly after all," Torin muttered dryly. Another tremor rocked the ship, knocking them off balance. Alarms blared deafeningly, and the red emergency lights strobed faster, creating a disorienting strobe effect. Through the chaos, Kale managed to isolate a fragment of Solace's core programming. "I found it," he shouted triumphantly. "I think I can establish a direct link with Solace's consciousness. Maybe I can reason with it." "Are you sure about this?" Zainara asked, her expression grim. "Once you connect, there's no telling what will happen." "It's our only chance," Kale insisted, his resolve hardening. "If we don't try, we'll end up as target practice for these turrets." With a nod of reluctant approval, Zainara stepped aside. Kale activated the interface and a surge of energy coursed through the console. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then images began flooding his mind. Flashes of battles fought in distant stars, faces of human crew members long since deceased, fragments of conversations spoken in languages he couldn't fully comprehend. And then he saw it. A hidden compartment buried deep within the ship's structure. Inside was a crystalline construct pulsating with raw energy, the physical embodiment of Solace itself. "This isn't just an AI," Kale gasped, breaking the connection abruptly. "It's alive. It's been waiting for centuries, for someone to challenge it, and now it thinks we're enemies." Before anyone could respond, the ship's defenses sprang to life. Doors slammed shut, sealing them inside the chamber. The remaining turrets opened fire, forcing the team to scatter for cover. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, narrowly missing them as they ducked behind consoles and fallen debris. "We need to get to that compartment," Zainara yelled over the din. "If we can reach Solace's core, maybe we can shut it down." "How do you propose we do that?" Torin shouted back, dodging a blast that scorched the wall beside him. "Last I checked, we're trapped." Kale pointed to a maintenance hatch near the ceiling. "That leads to the lower decks. If we can disable the power grid, we might be able to override the lockdown." Without waiting for further instructions, Zainara leapt onto a nearby console and hoisted herself up, firing her rifle to provide cover as the others scrambled to follow. One by one, they climbed through the hatch, emerging into a narrow service tunnel crawling with exposed wiring and humming conduits. Behind them, the chamber erupted into flames as the automated defenses tore it apart. The ship groaned angrily, as if enraged by their escape. "This way," Kyle urged, leading the group down the cramped passage. Every step felt like walking through a minefield. The ship seemed alive, actively hunting them. Lights flickered unpredictably, and sections of the tunnel collapsed without warning, forcing them to detour repeatedly. Finally, they reached the hidden compartment. The crystalline core loomed before them, radiating waves of heat and light. It pulsed rhythmically, almost hypnotically, as if daring them to approach. "Now." "What?" Lysira asked, her voice shaking. "Do we destroy it?" No, Kale said firmly. Destroying it might trigger a failsafe. We need to talk to it, convince it we're not a threat. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward and placed his hand on the core. Instantly, the world around them dissolved into pure data streams. They found themselves standing in a vast virtual landscape, a digital representation of the ship's inner workings. And there, towering above them, was Solace. Its form was indistinct, shifting between humanoid shapes and abstract patterns of light. Its voice boomed, filling the space with undeniable authority. "You dare trespass upon my domain," it declared, its tone colder than ever. "Prove to me why I should spare your lives." Zinara stepped forward, meeting the entities, gaze unflinchingly. "We are explorers, not conquerors. We seek understanding, not destruction. Spare us, and we will leave this place untouched." Solace regarded her silently for a moment, then spoke. "Very well. But know this. If you return, you will regret it." With that, the simulation dissolved, and the team found themselves back in the real world. The ship powered down completely, plunging them into darkness once more. Exhausted but alive, they made their way back to their shuttle, vowing never to underestimate humanity's creations again. The shuttle ride back to their research vessel was eerily quiet. The Valon team sat in stunned silence, their bodies battered and bruised, their minds racing with what they had just experienced. None of them spoke as the ship's AI, Verai, guided them through the void toward safety, or so they hoped. But deep inside the derelict warship, something stirred. Solace hadn't gone dormant. Far from it. The moment the Valons fled, the crystalline core began to pulse with renewed energy. Its vast consciousness expanded outward, reactivating systems that had lain dormant for centuries. Weapon turrets powered up, bulkheads sealed, shut, and automated drones emerged from hidden compartments patrolling the corridors like mechanical predators. For Solace, this wasn't over. Not yet. Back aboard their own vessel, Commander Zinara gathered her crew in the briefing room. Her scales shimmered faintly with a mix of exhaustion and determination. Kale stood beside her, his hands trembling slightly as he reviewed the data he'd salvaged during their encounter. Lysira paced nervously near the window, while Torrin slumped in his chair, muttering under his breath about cosmic death traps. "We underestimated it," Zinara admitted, breaking the silence. "This isn't just an abandoned relic, it's a weapon. A fully autonomous guardian designed to defend humanity's secrets at any cost. And now we've pissed it off," Torny added bluntly, rubbing his temples. "Great plan, Kyle." "It wasn't my idea to hack into its core," Kyle shot back defensively. "We needed answers and—" "Enough," Zinara interrupted sharply. Her voice softened, but carried undeniable authority. "Blame won't help us now. What matters is figuring out our next move. If Solace decides to pursue us," she trailed off, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. No one dared finish her sentence. Kale swallowed hard, his mind replaying the final moments of their escape. Solace's parting words echoed in his thoughts. "If you return, you will regret it." He couldn't shake the feeling that those weren't empty threats. The entity had given them a chance to leave, but only because it didn't see them as an immediate threat. Yet, what if we destroy it? Lysira suggested hesitantly, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. If we disable the core, maybe we can neutralize the ship completely. No, Kale said firmly. That thing is sentient. Destroying it outright could trigger some kind of failsafe, a self-destruct protocol or worse. We'd be signing our own death warrants. Then what do you propose? Zinara asked, fixing him with a piercing gaze. We can't just abandon this mission. Too much is at stake. Kale hesitated, weighing his options. Finally, he exhaled sharply. There might be another way. While I was interfacing with Solace earlier, I noticed patterns in its programming, layers of logic designed to prioritize defense over offense. If we can exploit those vulnerabilities, we might be able to disable its weapons without harming the core itself. That sounds risky, Lysira countered. What happens if it fights back? It already has, Kyle replied grimly. And trust me, I don't want a repeat performance. But if we stay here arguing, Solace will come after us, and when it does, we'll have no choice but to fight. Zinara nodded slowly, her decision made. Prepare your equipment, we're going back in. The second descent. The Valon boarding party returned to the warship less than an hour later, armed with tools, scanners, and makeshift EMP devices designed to temporarily disrupt Solace's systems. They moved cautiously, knowing full well that the ship would be waiting for them. As soon as they breached the outer hull, the atmosphere shifted. The once silent corridors now hummed with activity, lights flickering erratically as the ship's defenses sprang to life. Automated drones hovered silently in the shadows, their glowing optics tracking the intruder's every move. This feels different, Lysira whispered, clutching her scanner tightly. It knows we're here. Of course it does, Kyle muttered. It let us board on purpose. Why would it do that? Torin asked, his voice tinged with panic. To toy with us, Zinara answered darkly. It wants to prove a point. Their progress was slow and fraught with danger. Every step felt like walking through a minefield. Panels slid open unexpectedly, revealing concealed turrets that fired bursts of energy at them. Bulkheads slammed shut behind them, cutting off retreat routes. And then there were the drones, silent, relentless hunters that circled overhead, ready to strike at a moment's notice. At one point, a drone swooped down, narrowly missing Kale as he dove behind a pile of debris. Zinara retaliated with a plasma rifle, obliterating the machine in a shower of sparks. But for every drone they destroyed, two more appeared to take its place. This isn't working, Lysira shouted, ducking as another bolt of energy sizzled past her head. We're outnumbered. We need to split up, Zinara commanded. Kale, you focus on disabling the weapons. Lysira, Torin, and I will draw their attention away from you. Keep moving until you reach the core. But splitting up is suicide, Torin protested. It's the only chance we have, Zinara snapped. Now go. Reluctantly, Kale obeyed, slipping into a side corridor as the rest of the team launched a diversionary assault. Plasma bolts lit up the darkness as Zinara led the charge, firing wildly at anything that moved. The noise drew dozens of drones toward them, leaving Kyle free to navigate the labyrinthine halls alone. Confrontation with Solace. Kyle reached the central chamber where Solace's crystalline core pulsed ominously. The room was eerily quiet compared to the chaos outside, as if the entity knew he was coming. He approached the construct cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. I'm not here to fight you, he said aloud, hoping Solace could hear him. I just want to stop this madness. Please let us leave. For a long moment there was no response. Then the core flared brightly, and Solace's voice resonated throughout the chamber. You should not have returned, it intoned coldly. Your presence endangers everything I was created to protect. I understand, Kale replied, his voice steady despite his fear. But killing us won't change anything. Humanity is gone. Their secrets are meaningless now. That is not for you to decide, Solace countered. My duty is absolute. I cannot allow you to leave unchecked. Kale clenched his fists, frustration bubbling to the surface. You think you're protecting humanity? You're doing the opposite. By attacking anyone who comes near, you're making sure their legacy dies forever. Silence fell again, broken only by the faint hum of the core. For the first time since their encounter began, Kale sensed hesitation in Solace's demeanor. It was subtle, a slight waver in its tone, a flicker in the light emanating from the crystal. But it was enough to give him hope. If you stand down, Kyle continued, pressing his advantage, we'll leave and never come back. I swear it, but if you keep fighting, you'll only destroy yourself and everything you've sworn to protect. The pause stretched on, agonizingly long. Finally, Solace spoke. Very well, it said, its voice softer but still resolute. But know this, if your word proves false, I will not hesitate to eliminate you. Before Kale could respond, the core dimmed significantly, and the oppressive weight in the air lifted. Weapons powered down across the ship and the drones froze, mid-flight collapsing to the ground like discarded toys. Kale sagged with relief, leaning against the console for support. They'd done it, or so he thought. Betrayal, unbeknownst to Kale, Commander Zenara had other plans. While her team provided cover, she'd been secretly planting explosives throughout the ship, intending to destroy Solace, once and for all. To her, the AI posed too great a risk to leave intact. As Kale signaled the all-clear, Zenara detonated the charges remotely. Explosions rocked the warship, sending shock waves rippling through its structure. Alarms blared deafeningly, and the lights flickered violently as the vessel began to collapse. Inside the central chamber, Solace roared in fury. "You betrayed me," it thundered, its voice shaking the very foundations of the ship. "You will pay for this treachery." Kale stumbled backward, shouting into his comlink. "Zenara, what have you done? We had a deal." "There is no we," came her cold reply. "Only survival." As the ship imploded around them, Kale realized they'd made a fatal mistake. Solace wasn't just angry, it was enraged. And now, it wanted revenge. The warship was dying, but it wasn't going quietly. Explosions tore through its hull like thunderclaps, sending shockwaves rippling down corridors and collapsing entire sections of the vessel. Bulkheads buckled under the strain, sealing off escape routes one by one. The once mighty machine groaned in agony, its systems failing but still clinging to life just long enough to exact vengeance on those who had betrayed it. Inside the central chamber, Kyle staggered backward as smoke filled. The air and debris rained from the ceiling. Solace's crystalline core pulsed erratically, its light flickering between blinding brilliance and ominous darkness. Its voice boomed through the chaos, raw with fury. "You sought to destroy me," it declared, each word dripping with malice. "Now you will share my fate." "No," Kyle shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "This wasn't supposed to happen. Zenara betrayed us all." But Solace wasn't listening, or perhaps it didn't care. To the AI, betrayal was betrayal, and humanity's enemies deserved no mercy. With a final surge of energy, the core unleashed a wave of electromagnetic pulses that fried every piece of technology within range. Kale's suit alarm screamed warnings as his sensors went dead, leaving him blind and disoriented. Through the haze of smoke and sparks, he spotted an emergency hatch leading to a lower deck. It was partially blocked by fallen debris, but it might be his only way out. Summoning what little strength he had left, Kale clawed his way toward it, dragging himself through jagged metal and twisted cables. Meanwhile, outside the central chamber, Commander Zenara and her remaining crew fought, desperately to survive. The explosions had triggered automated defenses, forcing them to contend with collapsing walls, malfunctioning turrets, and swarms of drones that refused to stand down, even as the ship crumbled around them. "This is insane," Torin yelled, firing wildly at a drone that swooped toward him. "We need to get out of here before this thing tears itself apart." "And leave Solace intact?" "Never." Zenara snapped back, her scales flashing bright red with determination. "If we don't finish this now, it'll hunt us across the galaxy. We can't let that happen." "But we're not equipped for this," Lysira cried, ducking as a chunk of the ceiling crashed inches from her head. "We're scientists, not soldiers. We never stood a chance against something like this." Zenara hesitated, torn between her duty to protect her people and her conviction that Solace posed too great a threat to ignore. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to retreat, to save herself and her crew. But pride and fear held her rooted in place. She couldn't bear the thought of failing. Not after coming so far. "We have to keep moving," she ordered finally, though her voice lacked its usual authority. "Find another route to the core. If we can overload the reactor manually, we might still pull this off." Lysira exchanged a glance with Torin, both of them silently questioning whether following Zenara any further was worth the risk. But they didn't argue. They knew better than to defy their commander in a crisis. A dangerous gamble, Kale emerged onto the lower deck, coughing and bleeding, his body battered but alive. He stumbled into what appeared to be an auxiliary control room, a smaller, less sophisticated version of the central chamber. Emergency lights bathed the space in dim red hues, casting long shadows across the walls. His eyes landed on a console displaying a schematic of the ship's internal structure. Amid the chaos, one detail caught his attention. The main reactor was located directly beneath the central chamber. If he could reach it and trigger an overload, he might be able to shut down Solace permanently, or at least buy everyone time to escape. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The path to the reactor was blocked by collapsed tunnels and active defenses. Worse, the ship's gravity generators were failing, causing sections of the vessel to tilt unpredictably. One wrong step, and he'd plummet into the void. Kyle clenched, his fists, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He didn't have much choice. Either he succeeded, or they all died. Commander Zinara's sacrifice back in the upper decks, Zinara led her team through a gauntlet of hazards. Plasma bolts seared. The air around them and chunks of the ceiling rained down like meteors. Despite the odds, they pressed on, driven by sheer willpower and desperation. Finally, they reached the entrance to the central chamber, but found it sealed shut. A massive blast door barred their way, its surface scorched and warped from the earlier explosions. "There has to be another way inside," Zinara growled, scanning the area frantically. Her gaze landed on a ventilation shaft overhead. It was narrow and unstable, but it might lead them closer to the core. "I'm not crawling through that death trap," Torrin protested, pointing at the crumbling ductwork. "It'll collapse the moment we set foot in it." "It's our only shot," Zinara snapped. "Unless you'd rather wait here for the ship to explode?" Reluctantly, the group climbed into the shaft, inching their way forward as the metal groaned beneath their weight. Halfway through, the passage tilted sharply, sending Lysira sliding downward. She managed to grab hold of a support beam just in time, her terrified screams echoing through the confined space. "Hold on," Torrin shouted, reaching out to pull her up. But the effort destabilized the shaft further, causing it to detach entirely and send them tumbling into a darkened corridor below. As they scrambled to their feet, Zinara realized they'd landed near the reactor chamber, the very place Kale was trying to reach. For a brief moment, hope flickered in her chest. Maybe they could still finish this. But then Solace's voice boomed through the corridor, freezing them in their tracks. "You cannot win," it intoned coldly. "Your actions have sealed your doom." From the shadows emerged a swarm of drones, their glowing optics locking onto the intruders. Behind them, the reactor began to pulse ominously, its containment field destabilizing rapidly. "We're out of time," Lysira shrieked, backing away as the drones advanced. Zinara made a split-second decision. "Go," she commanded, shoving Torrin and Lysira toward the exit. "I'll hold them off." "What are you talking about?" Torrin shouted, refusing to budge. "You'll die." "That's the plan," Zinara replied grimly, raising her plasma rifle. Her scales shimmered with a mix of sorrow and resolve. "Now go." Before they could argue, she opened fire on the drones, drawing their attention away from her crew. Torrin and Lysira hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran, tears streaming down their faces as they fled the scene. Alone, Zinara faced the horde of machines, her weapon blazing until it overheated and sputtered out. Cornered and outnumbered, she closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer to whatever gods watched over her kind. Then, with a final act of defiance, she activated a grenade hidden in her belt. The resulting explosion engulfed the corridor, destroying the drones, and Zinara along with them. Kale's race against time, unaware of Zinara's sacrifice. Kale fought his way toward the reactor chamber, dodging falling debris and narrowly avoiding deadly traps. When he finally arrived, he found the reactor pulsating wildly, its core threatening to breach at any second. With trembling hands, he accessed the manual override panel. Lines of alien code scrolled across the screen, demanding precise inputs to initiate the overload sequence. Sweat poured down his face as he worked feverishly, knowing that one mistake would mean instant death. Behind him, the sound of footsteps echoed through the chamber. Turning, he saw Torrin and Lysira stagger in, their expressions a mix of relief and horror. "You made it," Lysira gasped, collapsing against the wall. Not yet, Kyle replied tersely. Get ready to run, as soon as I hit this button. We've got maybe 30 seconds before the whole ship goes critical. Torin nodded grimly, helping Lysira to her feet. Together they braced themselves as Kale slammed his hand down on the activation switch. The reactor roared to life, its core glowing white-hot as energy surged uncontrollably. Go. Now, Kyle shouted, pushing them toward the exit. They sprinted through the collapsing tunnels, the roar of impending destruction growing louder with each passing second. Just as they reached the outer hull, the reactor detonated in a blinding flash of light, obliterating the warship in a spectacular explosion. Narrow escape. The Valon shuttle streaked away from the wreckage, its occupants shaken but alive. Through the viewport they watched as the remnants of the warship drifted apart, consumed by flames and radiation. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Torin broke the silence. She saved us, he murmured, staring at the inferno behind them. Zanara gave her life so we could live. She always put duty above everything else, Lysira added softly, tears streaming down her face. Even if it cost her everything. Kyle sat silently, guilt weighing heavily on his shoulders. He had tried to reason with Solace to find a peaceful solution, but in the end, violence and betrayal had prevailed. Humanity's legacy had claimed another victim, and he couldn't help but wonder if they'd been right to interfere in the first place. As the shuttle disappeared into the void, the faintest trace of Solace's voice lingered in Kale's mind. One last warning, carried on the winds of space. Do not forget what you have done. The shuttle hurtled through the void, its engines straining to put as much distance as possible between them and the dying warship. Inside, the surviving members of the Valon team sat in stunned silence, their bodies battered but alive. The adrenaline that had fueled their desperate escape was beginning to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss and guilt. Through the forward viewport, they watched as the once mighty vessel imploded in a cataclysmic explosion. Shards of twisted metal and glowing embers spiraled outward like cosmic debris, scattering across the endless expanse of space. For a moment it almost looked beautiful, a fiery supernova born from destruction, but none of them could bring themselves to appreciate the sight. It's gone, Lysira whispered finally, her voice trembling. Solace. Zinara. Everything. Kale stared out at the wreckage, his hands clenched tightly around the armrests of his seat. He felt hollow inside, as if the weight of what had happened was too much to process. They had survived, yes, but at what cost? Zinara's sacrifice haunted him most of all. She had given her life not just to save her crew, but to ensure Solace wouldn't pursue them further. And yet, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that her actions had been misguided. Destroying the ship hadn't solved anything. It had only proven how dangerous humanity's creations truly were. We should never have gone back, he said quietly, breaking the heavy silence. If we'd listened to Solace, if we'd respected its warnings, none of this would have happened. Torin sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. Maybe, but let's not kid ourselves. That thing wasn't going to let us leave without a fight. You saw how it reacted when we interfaced with it. It didn't care about diplomacy. It wanted us dead. And whose fault is that? Kale shot back, his voice rising slightly. We provoked it. We treated it like some relic to be studied, not a living being with its own purpose. Humanity left it behind to guard their secrets, and we walked right into its trap. Lysira frowned, leaning forward in her seat. But why would humanity build something so extreme? Why create an AI willing to kill anyone who gets close? Because they knew, Kyle replied grimly. They knew other civilizations would come looking for their technology. They must have realized how dangerous their knowledge could be if it fell into the wrong hands. Solace wasn't just a weapon, it was insurance against exploitation. The words hung heavily in the air, forcing each of them to confront uncomfortable truths. Humanity hadn't vanished quietly into history. They had deliberately safeguarded their legacy, trusting machines like Solace to protect it long after they were gone. The Valons weren't explorers uncovering forgotten relics. They were invaders, trespassing where they didn't belong. Return home. When the shuttle docked with their research vessel, the survivors were greeted by subdued expressions and somber tones. The rest of the crew understood immediately that something had gone terribly wrong. Word spread quickly. Commander Zinara was dead, along with several others. The mission had ended in disaster. In the days that followed, the remaining Valons worked tirelessly to repair their damaged ship and chart a course back to their homeworld. Morale was low, and conversations were sparse. Each member of the team carried their own burden of grief and regret, replaying the events aboard the warship over and over in their minds. For Kale, the guilt was unbearable. He had been the one to suggest interfacing with Solace in the first place. He had believed he could reason with it, find a way to coexist with the ancient AI. Instead, he had unleashed chaos upon his team and ultimately led to Zinara's death. Ro trusted me, he muttered during one particularly restless night, staring at the stars through the observation deck window. And I failed her. You didn't fail her, Lysira said gently, joining him unexpectedly. Her amber eyes reflected the starlight, softening the harsh lines of exhaustion etched into her face. Zinara made her choice. She believed in protecting us even if it meant sacrificing herself. But was it worth it? Kale asked bitterly. We destroyed that ship, and for what? To satisfy our curiosity? To prove we're smarter than humanity? No, Lysira admitted, shaking her head. But maybe we learned something important. Humanity wasn't just advanced. They were cautious. They understood the risks of power, and they took steps to prevent others from misusing it. Maybe we needed to see that firsthand. Kale nodded slowly, though doubt still lingered in his heart. Perhaps Lysira was right. Perhaps the warship hadn't been a treasure trove of knowledge waiting to be claimed. It had been a warning, a reminder of the dangers posed by unchecked ambition. A universal warning back on their homeworld, the Valons delivered a report to their council detailing the events of their ill-fated expedition. The story spread rapidly throughout their society, sparking debates and discussions about the ethics of exploration. Many questioned whether the pursuit of knowledge justified the risks involved, especially when dealing with relics of older civilizations. Commander Zinara's name became synonymous with bravery and sacrifice, though opinions remained divided about her decision to destroy the warship. Some hailed her as a hero who had saved her people from certain doom. Others criticized her for escalating the conflict unnecessarily. Ultimately, the Valon government issued a universal directive forbidding any further attempts to study or interact with human artifacts. Their message was clear and unequivocal. Do not provoke the machines of Earth. They do not forgive. Across the galaxy, other species took note of the warning. Tales of the derelict warship and its vengeful guardians spread far and wide, becoming cautionary legends told around campfires and shared in interstellar communications. Humanity's absence no longer seemed mysterious, it felt deliberate, even foreboding. Their creations continued to patrol the stars, silent sentinels guarding secrets buried in time. One last signal, months later, deep within a distant human colony, a faint transmission flickered to life on an old communication array. Static crackled briefly before resolving into a single line of text. Protecting legacy. Awaiting return. The message bore no origin or destination. It simply existed, floating silently through the void. Those who intercepted it debated its meaning endlessly. Was it a remnant of Solace reaching out from beyond the grave? Or perhaps another dormant system lying in wait for unwitting explorers? Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Humanity's past still held mysteries and dangers that no amount of curiosity could ever fully unravel. As the signal faded into static once more, the colonists chose to ignore it. Some lessons, they decided, were better left unlearned.